Hey, what's going on, everyone? Baddest Chaplain here, hoping all is well with you and yours. Hope you're living your best life and all that good stuff. Today, we're going to be talking with Brittney George. Brittney's a licensed and nationally certified counselor. Her therapeutic lens centers social justice and focuses on those in recovery from abusive and repressive experiences. Brittney also uses her love of storytelling to help others on their journey. It's going to be a really great conversation talking about mental health, talking about just, taking care of yourself so you can take care of other people and just be your best self. So, Brittney, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here, Chris. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Glad to have you here for sure. So you had a sentence on your website that really jammed me up. Like just to sort of take everyone behind the veil. Like obviously, I would assume they know that we kind of prep for these conversations. And in looking at its website, I read this sentence that there's on several pages that says the healing starts now,
Mhm.
and that really just jammed me up. Because I think as a society and as people, we have been through and are going through so much. So, Brittney,
Mhm.
in your
Mhm.
estimation, what's the importance of therapy in this
Yeah.
healing journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping that I clear up a couple of misconceptions, at least in the knowledge that I've built up over these past few years, especially. Therapy is not the medicine; it
Mm,
guides you towards the medicine,
mm-hmm.
right? I know therapy has been, really normalized, and people are, especially Gen Z, like they are the generation that is making it like therapy is on par with going to the dentist and
Right.
regular healthcare, and so that is
Yeah,
awesome and
yeah.
great. But we look at what are we ailing from? Like, what do we need healing from? Some people have the individual based wounds. They're going through divorce. They've lost a loved one. Um, they're going through domestic violence, like very individualized, ailments. And so, but what we also got to look at is that there's ancestral, there's generational wounds that a lot of us are dealing with. And so, therapy isn't the end all be all. It cannot be, but hopefully, what it does, it gets people into safe environments where they can begin to
Mhm.
ask the right questions and figure out what does my healing need to look like.
Yeah.
But I really would like to clear up the fact that going to therapy in and of itself is
Mhm.
going to meet a lot of needs, but it's not going to be the end all and be all. Don't put all your eggs in the therapy basket, and that's coming straight from a therapist. So,
100%,
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Now, I love that because I think people are in such a place of extremes, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
especially just like with social media, you can be super dramatic about whatever you care about, right? So it's either like
Yeah.
therapy is like everything, or like
Yeah.
therapy
Hmm.
is nothing. Like more like I
Right.
hear like a lot of like old school perspectives on it. It's like, man, what you going to that doctor for? You crazy? Like that kind of that kind of
Yes.
perspective on it, you know.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and
Absolutely.
I think about another thing that you speak about with your practice is that it's justice centered and
Hmm.
inclusive. So really thinking about how in the sort of overall zeitgeist and the thinking of our time, these two terms have really risen to the top. Now,
Hmm.
going back with that sort of like not even necessarily old school, but just like more conservative perspectives, whatever it is, people may roll their eyes at these buzzwords, but can you explain its importance in the field? As this isn't just something like a sticker you just slap onto the website, but it has significance.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of slapping. We know how the sausage gets made, and
Right.
when things become normal, language, like the
Uh,
average person on the street, is are using these languages. They're
right.
using these words. Businesses, and people that can make money off of these terms. They're like, this sounds like something that the people would invest their own money into, and
Come
so
on.
there's a lot of co-opting, and
Right.
so where I kind of stand with the people that maybe will be rolling their eyes at it, because it could be like, okay, are you for real about it
Hmm.
being justice centered, or is this just something for you to get clicks and be relevant?
That part.
But there are social justice theories that
Hmm.
prop up practices that want to really make their work justice centered. And I think what they're finding is societal disconnection, marginalization, things like racism, sexism, transphobia, all of these things contribute to mental unwellness,
Yeah.
right? And they took a couple of decades, because we know how research happens. It happens over a long period of time,
No doubt about
and
it.
so they're finally coming out with information for people of like, it ain't just your individual psychopathology of like, okay, I got, serotonin is off on my brain, and so that leads to depression. They're seeing it's not just what goes on inside of the individual,
Hmm.
but the societal influences, the structures of the communities and the places that they live,
Right.
that actually, like poverty, they got, oh
Come
my
on.
goodness, like books and books and books and books and books, about how poverty causes mental illness, the correlation
Yeah.
between that, how it causes it. And so the math is mathing,
Truly.
as far as it being like, we don't necessarily have to use a medical model when it comes to treating people. Therapy does not have to be apolitical the
Hmm.
way that it was set up to be, but we can actually have people in these spaces, in these rooms, provide the therapy services for them, and make it super righteous, make it
Right.
super about attacking and helping them to feel empowered when it comes to these barriers that we're talking about, these isms,
Hmm.
that we're talking about. But I want to differentiate between cultural competency and social justice practices,
Right. Right.
because I
Right.
took that class, right? The
Uh huh.
the cultural humility class. I actually had to go to. You had the big project at the end of the semester was a cultural immersion project, and I
Of
ended up
course.
spending time at a Korean church.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it was good. They got down, you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
So I was
100%.
like, right. So it was wonderful to be able to connect with Korean brothers and sisters.
Hmm.
Um, but that was like super, super, superficial, right?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It gave me an opportunity, and maybe the purpose of that class was just to give you a little bit of a taste.
Hmm.
But you got countless counselors being sent into the field, working with these people,
Come on.
having these very positive um, conversations, these very positive, places where we met, which was our faith,
Yeah.
but not talking to them about, okay, what ails your community? What are some of the issues that are going on for you? That's not going to prepare me if a Korean person comes into my office, right?
Right.
And so I think where we don't want to just know about people's culture. We want to know, like, what does it look like for them to experience liberation culturally,
Hmm.
socially,
Hmm.
economically? Like,
Right.
what are the barriers specifically for them, and how can I get from in front of the couch, across from the couch, and get involved in that? But that's going to take not being apolitical.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Hmm.
I love that you talk about that, because I think in this time where people talk about identity politics a lot. People are
Yeah.
talking about um, essentially ways to really avoid the social justice conversation, right? And it's
Right.
not a new trick to say like, oh, don't talk about that. That's too political. And
Hmm.
so like this sort of like a politic way of doing things has kind of
Yeah.
been held up as a virtue. But
Hmm.
what I'm hearing you say is that there's a necessity, if we're going to do this work well, to see the
Hmm.
whole person, right, and not
Right.
just try to treat like the details of their identity as if it's like something that could be put to the side.
Right, like something that's optional, something that is, and it does look a specific way, as far as like, I'm thinking of a really quick example, the
Yeah.
use of the word queer, right?
Right. Right. Right.
That may not be something that person you're working with feels is offensive,
Right.
right? And then there's some people that they feel empowered by that term, and
Certainly.
so um, it's one of those things of, you're sitting and you're listening and you're waiting for the education on how that impacts them as an individual. But you definitely gotta, like, you gotta know what's going on in the world.
Hmm.
And I think it also, it happens a lot for counselors in private practice, where you can cultivate this really safe environment, or if
Hmm.
safe with quotation marks is safe for you,
Right.
because you are your own business owner. You can keep topics that's out there. They ain't got nothing to do with me.
Hmm.
And so you kind of have your own, like, little kingdom in your private practice, where you can really insulate yourself from a
Right.
lot of these issues. But then when people come in, with these experiences, it's
Hmm.
kind of like, how am I going to act? Am I really about this, or am I wanting to help people to feel good about the world that they live in? Just like, okay, they
Right.
come in for their tune up. All right, you're so resilient, you're so strong, but like I don't do anything to help you
Come on.
be liberated from the exact circumstances that they're in. So, mhm.
And I love that you talk about that, because something I've thought about quite a bit, whenever we talk about like inclusion and multicultural
Mhm.
spaces, is I think a lot of people suffer from a lack of at bats. Right, I'm a baseball fan, so forgive the
Mm,
analogy, but it's just I feel like we don't get enough repetitions of dealing with folks who are different, and it's
yeah,
something that I'm a proud New Yorker, so I feel like one of the blessings of it was every single day I dealt with people who had something different than me.
yeah,
Like
mhm,
something. It wasn't as if like
mhm,
everything was different, because I think we all were living in the same place, so there was that commonality, right? Like, oh man, the
yeah,
subway's late again, right? Like, that
right,
kind of thing. But I think that you have to deal with folks who have different religions and different customs,
mhm,
and different,
mhm,
not just food, but like ways of expressing grief and ways of expressing
yeah,
joy. And maybe
mhm,
you're with a group of people who prefer to be quiet most of the time, a group of people who prefer to be loud most of the time. Like,
mhm,
you got to get
mhm,
those at bats, because otherwise the kind of work you're talking about is going to be super difficult for you if you're like also doing the like getting over the hump of like, oh man, like, was that okay? Like, did I offend them? Like,
yeah,
you need the
yeah,
at bats for real.
yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that. You want your work to not. It feels so homogenous is the term.
Sure, sure.
That's that sameness. And I
Yeah,
think this is where mental health has been harmful and violent towards people who are different,
yeah,
right?
yeah. No
And there's
doubt.
a lot of othering that is happening to enslaved people who were wanting to escape from slavery were given a mental health diagnosis. They
That's
were
right.
seen as as being mentally ill for not
That
wanting to be
drapetomania.
right. Wild, really, really.
It
Okay,
is.
okay,
Yeah, yeah. It just lets you know where folks were like, oh, they must be crazy. Like, they want,
right.
like, who wouldn't enjoy
Oh,
this? It kind of shows you like
goodness.
how perverse the culture was at that time, man.
Mhm,
Yeah, no doubt
mhm,
about it. No doubt about it. But switching gears, I want to talk about play. Um,
mhm,
because you emphasize play therapy, and I felt like I started doing therapy during the pandemic.
mhm.
Not even so much because of COVID, more because I was a DEI director, and I was like, if I'm
Oh,
gonna keep my brain,
listen,
like, I like to flip tables metaphorically.
come on now, come
So
on.
to keep it a metaphor, I was like, let me see what this better help talk about real quick. You know what I mean?
Yes,
And
yes.
so, but before that, I remember being in my seminary program and learning about myself that whenever I took the time to play at that time at the seminary, a lot of people were big into playing frisbee, like play ultimate frisbee. And at first, when I got here, I was hating on the big time Brittany. I was like, oh my dog, I'm gonna catch a frisbee. Like, what are you trying to, what do you think this is? And so I got into it and I ended up loving it. And I found that when I was
Mhm,
playing frisbee, I like could study better. I felt better.
mhm,
Like, my brain just
mhm,
felt clear. So
mhm.
talk to me about its importance and relevance when you talk about play, and how it helps people on their healing journey on the mental health side.
Yeah, it is one of my favorite topics of all time.
Hmm.
Um, I call play my first love in
All right.
therapy.
Yeah, yeah.
um, just because of how pivotal of a time play therapy itself was introduced to me in my
Hmm.
career. It was the first specialty that I had gained. Had no idea it was a thing
Right.
whenever I was in my education portion of my training. And then my very first internship was introduced to play therapy
Hmm.
and specifically for children, but it like shifted my thinking in a lot of different areas, even
Hmm.
across the lifespan. So it's still one of the ways that I even try to implement it with adults because it has developmental implications across the whole
No
lifespan.
doubt.
And so, but it just like looks differently.
Yeah.
So if you've ever been in a moment and you're in the African diaspora. So I'm sure you have experienced this on a regular.
Yes.
But having a group, at least two or more, three or more adults in the same space, and y'all are doing a singular activity, and everyone's either like laughing or joking or like poking fun at each other.
Right.
That collective moment,
Yeah.
I think for adults, what I mean, it does have individualized supports, right? You got the cognitive, like you were saying, it helps you think kind of clear. It has the emotional component and benefit as well, mental as well, physical as well. But then what happens collectively? A part that isn't often talked about is talked about maybe in sociology, just
Sure,
because
sure.
that's the study of like people groups, right?
No doubt.
But the health of adults playing together,
Come
and
on.
what that does as a collective, what that does for us together as a collective,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
cannot be understated. And I think that especially like during COVID, for people to not have that, or to not have that in the same ways that we
Yeah,
had it, was one
yeah.
of the reasons why we were suffering,
No doubt.
and one of the reasons why gathering together, just in general ways, is helpful for our sense of play.
Hmm.
Um, and it is productive. People, there's kind of a joke among play therapists whenever we're typing notes up. Oh, that appeases insurance companies and appeases, bosses who sign off on notes.
Uh-huh.
I'm sitting there playing Connect Four or Uno, getting my behind handed to me by a
Right,
9-year-old.
right, right.
I'm playing. I'm okay at first, but I'm like, wait a second, let me
Draw
shift
four,
my
draw four.
right. This kid giving it to me right now. But it's like, okay, it doesn't, from like an outside perspective, it doesn't look like we're doing anything
Oh my
therapeutic.
gosh, yes.
But if what is going
Yeah.
on, the social building, the social skill building, rapport, emotional management, there's a lot of things that's happening, a lot of things that's going on. So we can't give play a rep of like, it's not productive, it's not, it's anti-work, right?
Right.
So no, absolutely. Play is incredibly important. And a lot of the reasons why most of us are suffering is because we bog down with all this obligatory stuff we have to do, stuff that's like, which a lot of it systemically, structurally is not our fault, because it's
Sure,
like, we got to survive, we got to pay
sure.
bills, but we need to stay connected to like our sense of play and the sense of,
Yeah.
our joy, even, that's connected with that.
Uh, you have set my brain on fire in the best way,
Play
because
is great, man.
play
It's
is
so great.
so
Mhm.
essential, and I often
Mhm.
uh, talk about and I've written about being childlike, not childish,
Mhm.
right? And,
Mhm.
and and just
Mhm.
thinking about the ways in which, especially if you think about it, like, not just therapy lens, but like also like a ministry lens,
Yeah.
anti-capitalist lens. Like, there's so many
Mhm.
reasons to prioritize play, and there's so many forces working against it to really
Yeah.
emphasize that, like, you're an adult, you need to be serious and work.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
this morning saw, and I need to find it so I can link to it on social, at Baddest Chaplain on all platforms.
Mhm.
Just thinking about uh this video where this husband and wife, I think they were like expecting a child, right? Like
Mhm.
it seemed to me like they didn't say, but it seemed to me like first trimester,
Okay.
and the wife came in with a gift for the husband, and it was like two bags. And one
Mhm.
bag, it was, and the husband, he seemed like such a sweet man. He wanted to read the card first before he just like ripped everything open,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's like very sentimental, brother. I was like,
Yeah.
you are a special person, man. I love the salt of the earth here. And he was reading the card, and like she was just singing his praises for being like so patient and so loving and thoughtful.
Mhm.
And he was like, yeah, I know you've been going through a lot with the hormones, and like it was just like a real loving demonstration of these two people like being fully understanding of each other, right? And like just a healthy marriage communicating, at least from like what I could see in a 90-second video, right?
Right.
And so in it, she one bag was like a game set headphones, and the second was a bigger bag, was an Xbox. And she was like, you need to be able to
Oh,
play, you need time for yourself,
that's so
especially
nice.
before the baby gets there. I was like, this is such like a loving thing. But I just think
Yeah.
about the ways in which our culture particularly the ways in which we've had just like such toxic relations in terms of like with it, like toxic conversations about like relationships and sniping between people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just like think about that caricature of like the man just sitting on the couch playing Xbox while like being
Right.
like, when's my dinner ready, or like the baby's crying or
Right.
whatever. I just felt
Yeah.
like such a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing, to your point, of play, and I just really want to big them up for that, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something like two people who know each other, two people
Right.
that know like how they relax, how they rest.
Mm-hmm.
There's a full understanding of like
Yeah.
this makes you happy, this replenishes you.
Right.
That's refreshing.
Just
That's
healthy.
really refreshing.
Yo,
Hmm.
every time I see healthy couples online, I'm like, praise God, like it's all hope is not lost.
I know it. I know it.
so
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 great.
in 2020, you created the Black and Whole podcast. Um, so in this time where people are talking often about deconstruction, people are really going through a lot of like existential crises. What
Mm-hmm.
in your opinion, Brittney, does wholeness look like for us?
Yo, that definition I think is evolved over time.
Mm,
Um, but I think now the definition I'm starting to work with is three parts: acceptance and attention, and loving kindness towards the whole self.
mm-hmm,
You were saying earlier about when someone feels like they found a part of the medicine. It's like,
mm-hmm,
oh, therapy. And there's this full lean into it's got to be all therapy. Like this is the answer, and like
mm-hmm.
there's no nuance, there's
Right,
no consideration for different parts
right,
that
right.
coexist at the exact same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I remember whenever research about gut health being
Oh, come
connected
on.
to mental health,
Right,
when that
right.
research came out a few years ago, it seemed like all of the agency I was working at the time, the I think my supervisor wanted all of the staff to get trained in like gut health, and like that was the thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
this is the answer, this
Right,
is the thing, this is
right.
what's gonna set it off. And so we love that. Society wise, consumer based, like we love that. Like, oh, I saw this on TikTok. There's a shadow work journal that's on TikTok
Yes,
right
yes,
now.
sir.
And I'm not down in the, or talking bad about the people who wrote that journal,
Sure,
although
sure.
they're not clinicians. So
Okay.
again, not gatekeeping. I'm not saying nothing like that,
But
but
it's
it's
something about
just
specialization. Y'all went to school for
right,
this, right? I respect it.
right. Like, come on now, we worked. I worked extremely hard, and I'm also a forever learner.
Yeah, yeah.
But people will posture things as like this is the ticket,
No
this is
doubt.
the key. So when we're talking about wholeness, we're saying that medicine is multifaceted, right?
Mm-hmm.
The things that can help you and support you can involve, and it must involve
Mm-hmm.
different parts because you are made up of different parts.
No
You
question.
have a social self, you have a spiritual self, you have, the physical self. And
Right.
so, and I think what's funny about that is these bits of medicine don't compete against each other. We make them compete against each other
Mm-hmm.
when it's really healthy and balanced for you to, like, if you pray, go pray. You know what I'm saying? And then on Monday, go see your therapist.
Right.
And then on Tuesday, go see your nutritionist.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's like you don't have to. I think there's some like even clinics that are starting to understand that
Mm-hmm.
with integrative healthcare.
Okay.
I continue to work part time at the health clinic that's based in Central Virginia. And so the my boss and then the head of psychiatry, they came together to erase the silos of the different departments,
Good, good,
dental,
good.
medical, behavioral health, and for
Right.
us to do like treatment room consults. So if you're sitting there for your annual checkup with your physician, and you score high on a PHQ-9, and the doctor's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about what's going on with you. Scoring a
Mm-hmm.
little high on this. Let's get a counselor in here to talk to you right there at the. And it's like, okay, make sure you got your. I see you haven't had a dental appointment in 2 years. Let's get you scheduled with
Ooh.
dental
Yeah,
while
yeah,
you're
yeah.
there,
Right.
because they understand.
Yeah.
I don't have to be afraid and nervous because I'm a doctor and this is outside of my specialty.
Come on.
I can come and I can bring my teammate.
Right.
right? To come and help for you, because your wholeness is what we're talking about. Your healthcare is made up of these different things, and we can build all these things in the same day.
All
So it's
right.
not even like a financial
Yeah, crossfire. Yeah.
competition there. So
Sure.
it's one of them things, like, it makes sense. It makes sense to do. So wholeness, acceptance of your full self,
Yeah.
of you can be really, really solid in this area, but you need help in this area, and that's
Hmm.
okay. That doesn't mean that you don't have good health about yourself. It just means this is an area where you need support.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really,
Hmm.
really uh good news. Absolute good news. On the whole uh wave of talking about wholeness, one of the best lessons I learned in ministry is that you can't pour from an empty cup.
Hmm.
So in your journey, you're dealing with a variety of folks in a variety of places on their own journeys. How do you take care of yourself while you're taking care of so many others?
I ain't gonna lie to you.
Come on.
I struggle with this one.
I hear you. I hear
Very
you.
much struggle with this one. And I don't know, Chris, if this is kind of there are certain types of people that are drawn into uh, these industries, this work.
Certainly,
And,
certainly.
right. And so what I found, just like talking to colleagues and across these 12 years, most of us have an issue with this.
Come on. Yeah, 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 yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of us, or at least a lot of us have struggled with it at some point,
Okay.
and we can talk about that. And I think over the past, like, maybe year or two, it's been really figuring out what listening to my body means,
Mhm.
because I had to admit to myself that I didn't know actually what that goes into, even down to, hey, I'm hungry,
Mhm.
even down to that. Eating out of habit versus eating whenever, because I intuitively can feel hunger,
Right.
right?
Right.
Being able to pick up on when I'm thirsty,
Mhm.
right? And so I think that is something that, maybe most of us have an issue with, because of how disconnected we are from our physical body.
Come on. Right, right, right.
And so listening to my body has been one of those helpful journeys. So that way, because your feelings are in your body, it isn't
Mhm.
just like a thought you have.
Of
Your
course.
feelings are your
Of
body. And
course.
so if I'm feeling burnt out, or if I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I'm feeling any sort of feeling,
Sure.
I'm feeling resourced, I'm feeling energetic,
Mhm.
right? To be able to know in the moment, okay, that is what I'm feeling, and then to be able to respond accordingly. Um, but the second part, vicarious trauma, is real. And so
Mhm.
I have to have good spiritual health, and I have to have good, when I say spiritual, I don't just mean like my religion, but being able to take care of my soul,
Okay.
um, being exposed to people's trauma, people's traumatic stories. Um, People come to me in process,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so being able to know, what does untethering myself, what does access look like for me?
Mm. Mhm.
Because I want to be a compassionate witness for them,
Of
but
course.
I can't internalize what it is that they are going through. I need to know when to kind of take that step back. But then it also, good boundaries need to happen when it comes to while I'm in therapy with them, because one of the other reasons, I think, or one of the other things that therapists struggle with, is rescuing people,
Right.
right? And so feeling like their progress is connected to me,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's like, if I have a client one week that isn't really doing well, I'm blaming myself for that.
My
And so
goodness.
that is a pressure that doesn't belong to me.
Right.
But then it prevents them from accessing what maybe needs to come from inside of themselves.
Got you. Got you.
Um, so all of that kind of wraps up into how I take care of myself, how I
Mhm.
frame my work, how I start my day. Um, for the sake of my schedule, I have to I like 3 days of the week I have to see clients a little bit early in the morning.
Okay.
But on the specific days where it's just my practice, I don't see people until a little bit later in the morning
Give yourself some
because
time.
I know how I am. I
Right.
like to come, sit down, have some coffee,
Sure.
maybe have like quiet time, like whatever it is that I
Yeah,
need
yeah,
to
yeah.
do. So that way you can ease yourself into the day. But these are things you just got to know about yourself, right?
Hmm.
And so if you're able to do that for yourself, then yeah.
Right.
So that's how I do that.
Yeah. Sounds like really being uh self-aware is a critical part of your
Mhm.
your work.
Mhm.
Yeah, I hear
Yeah.
that. I hear that.
Yeah.
What was a time in your life that made you feel grateful or in awe? Like, what was a time in your life where you just like, wow, like this is a special thing?
Oh, there was people are aware that you sent me these questions beforehand, right?
No, 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 they are now. This is this is really just like the documentary version of
It's like, oh man, she coming up with that like off the dome. That's a big question.
no. Listen, man. I like to make y'all look great as my guests, and so if that means looking like you're answering seemingly profound questions with ease, that helps me. It helps you. No one loses.
No, this was a hard one to pick to narrow down. It was a hard one to narrow down because
Yeah,
there were at least 3, 4 things that kind of came up in my mind. So I'll just kind of go to maybe the one that is more recent.
sure.
Um, Fall 2018 was when my grand finale, Nora, was born.
I hear it. I hear it. When you said grand
Right.
finale, I had no idea what you were talking about.
Oh
And I was like,
yeah.
oh, her child. Okay, yes.
Right. My child. My
I was
child.
like, you was in a play? Like, what you
Nora.
was doing?
Right.
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 And that was a hard season for me as far as like postpartum is concerned.
Sure, sure, sure.
And that was a difficult time in our life as a family.
Yeah, yeah.
Their layoffs happened at
Hmm.
the hospital that my husband worked at,
Right,
and
right.
he was one of the people that got laid off.
Uh-huh.
And so here we were, brand new baby, um, 3 kids total, and I think I was still on maternity leave and down in income.
Yeah, yeah.
So what uh, finances have typically been an area where I have had my faith tested.
Sure.
Um, but this time was different because it was we didn't see it coming, right?
Right,
And
right, right.
so I think what left me awestruck about just the provision of God
Hmm.
was that um, He truly keeps His promises,
No doubt about it.
right? And I think where my faith kind of evolved over that time was if I see a hard season coming, then it's like my faith will build up. Like I'll get like Jesus, I'll get there,
That's
okay?
right, that's right.
But it's like boom, you come home, and I'm like nursing our daughter,
Come
and you're like,
on.
why are you home early? And right,
Oh gosh, right,
so
right,
I'm just
right.
like, okay, I need to get there.
Yeah.
But the provision showing up through people,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because typically we would figure it out. There would be some kind of behind the scenes way, forgiveness for a bill
Right, right,
or
right.
an unexpected refund check, like some of those more kind of behind the scenes. But this provision season was community based.
Come on.
Community based. So like hands and feet for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Season. And I'm talking about like somebody dropping a stack.
Wow.
Stuff is just like this is beyond kind, right?
Right, right. Beyond kind.
Um, Beyond kind. And so, what kind of was also enveloped into that season was my mental health.
Mhm.
And so, um, had already gone through postpartum depression with Noah, with our middle, but this time it was anxiety. And
Sure.
it was, not going to get into the whole details of that, but
Got you.
another hands and feet was my family coming and getting me and baby Nora.
Yeah.
And so I spent maybe like a month and a half in South Carolina
Come on.
while Nick was in Virginia with the other
Right.
two. And so that just being like I didn't know that was an option, in
Yeah.
order for us to do. And so the way that my family just kind of wrapped their arms around me, around Nora, so that way I could heal from a very, very oppressive case of anxiety,
Yeah.
like of the lights that I haven't even experienced since.
Sure, sure, sure.
Um, was I think was restorative
Mhm.
to me and my faith at that time. And then even like looking back on it now, just every facet of our life, like we felt held
Yeah.
by others, financially, mentally,
Mhm.
socially. Um, it was it. There's still sometimes where I'm like, I don't know how bills were getting paid.
Come on.
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't
Right.
tell you. And so when I think about seasons that I have that I spent in awe, that is the most noteworthy season.
Mhm.
And it even kind of like rung out, anytime any little thing would pop up and I'm like, okay, I don't know how this is gonna happen. It's like, no, just look back, you
That's
know,
it.
and you'll be reminded of that.
Absolutely.
So hmm
And, you're touching on a point that I think is really essential to the power of testimony
hmm
and just something about a community of faith retelling the stories of how they got over it is for somebody this is the first time they've had uh a husband or a wife or a partner laid off. For somebody, it's the first
right.
time they've gotten that call of like, this is the final notice. Your bill is due.
hmm
Is due.
hmm
And if without these sharing of these stories, even though for us, it can be embarrassing to be like, man, I didn't have it to like to
Right.
pay this or whatever. It just reminds folks and encourages folks that like no problem is bigger than God, right? And
That's
I
right.
think there's so many problems that show up and they've got great theatrics and seeming larger than
Mm-hmm.
life. But if
hmm
one of my favorite scriptures to remind myself of when times have been extremely tight is when scripture says, I've never seen the righteous forsaken nor their seed
hmm
begging bread, right? And
hmm
Donald Lawrence put that into a fantastic song called Never Seen the Righteous. If you
He sure did.
if you, yeah, I mean, he put his foot in that song. Like,
He
it's just,
did.
right? Be singing that song on the way to work. Like, got no money in my pocket, but I'm gonna sing this song. Uh, and just thinking about the ways we have to encourage one another with our testimony. So, thank you for that, sincerely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sincerely. What would you say rather, is your hope for the world in this moment? Like, what's when you look at the landscape of things, you can localize it to the conversation of mental health and therapy, or just you know make it as expansive as you want to be. But what's your hope in this moment?
I got DM'd a question from somebody that I didn't know who they were, or at least they were a person that I didn't know like personally.
Mhm.
But they were asking me about how nihilistic like people feel
Huge. Yes.
about just situations and circumstances. Like there's a lot of revealing and stuff that's happening. People that were seen to be, great thought leaders or have their hands in the care of people,
Right.
either on the lighter end, seen to be human,
Yeah,
right?
they're a person, right?
So there's on that end, but
Yeah,
then also on the major extreme end, there
no
seems
doubt.
to be like anti what they stand
Yeah,
for,
a predator even.
which is right,
Yeah,
which is hurtful and harmful.
no doubt.
And so people are very disillusioned about if people are who they say they are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then, like, what does it look like for me to live authentically
Sure.
and, heal in community and be wrong in community? Me and Nate were talking about this morning. How how do I how do we call, what does call out, call in, like what does that look
Yeah,
like?
yeah.
What does that look like? And people should be able to be wrong,
Hmm.
um, and also for them to have a space to learn.
Yeah,
We got to give them a space to learn, or we casting people out before they've had an opportunity to learn.
truly.
But that this goes into what I was thinking about. What my hope for the world is, as we're rebuilding, there's dismantling happen, but as we're
Yeah,
rebuilding,
right,
I
right.
need for us to have clarity. I hope that we have clarity about what our role is.
Hmm.
specifically in the rebuilding.
Yeah.
Because where I may feel test and may feel, called, or may feel like this part is super important, that's okay if that's not your perspective,
Sure.
right? Because the rebuilding, of society, everybody has a place and a role
No doubt about
and
it.
something that they feel that's super important to do. And I hope that we get clarity about what individually we need to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
and that we don't stand in each other's way.
That part.
It's like I don't have to boo boo on what you're doing to uplift what I'm doing.
We don't.
You don't
It
have
does
to
not
do
have.
that.
It's not necessary.
Yeah,
Right.
right,
Not.
right. So it's like clarity in the role of the rebuild. Um, yeah, clarity in the role of the rebuild. And
Yeah.
then if we are needing to call out what injustice is, knowing what's the more justice centered response.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll give you a very specific. Uh, it kind of it's an ick for me.
Okay.
The Because it rings personal. We need to protect Black women, and I won't go
Sure.
very deep into that for this brevity of time. But there's a way that phrase has been used again for clicks and baits and to some relative, and
Certainly.
of course, no one would actually disagree with that.
Right. Right. On his
Like,
face.
no,
Yeah.
actually, I don't want to protect Black
I mean, the way things are going right now, that
women.
keyboard put a battery in folk back, man. Like.
True. No, very, 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 very true. But it's like, what does that actually look like in application?
Right. Right. Right.
I want us to know, what my hope is that even different terms that are very popularized, that we know how to actually walk those out, that we know how to
Yeah.
embody those principles, that we're not just out here saying all the right things, knowing the terms, using the language,
Mm-hmm.
businesses and places co-opting the language,
Of
but for
course.
us to know, what does this look like in practice?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think those two things are my highest hope.
Yeah, I'm with that. I'm with that. You said something about uh like apologizing earlier in your answer,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
a great example of it. I watch a lot of PBS, right? Like I don't mind. They're one brand I don't mind shouting out because it's paid for by viewers like us, so it doesn't even matter, right? So, but I watch NewsHour, and I used to watch Shields and Brooks, and now it's Capehart and Brooks. Is like the sort of like political debate on Friday evenings. And David Brooks made a little bit of waves on the internet last week because he was in Newark Airport. He took a picture of
Mm,
his meal. It was like a burger, fries, and looked like a drink. I can't tell if it's like bourbon or whatever. And he's like, this meal cost $78, and this is like part of why Americans have such sticker shock now, and so on and so forth. The people were like going at him. Apparently, it was like a black-owned business
mm,
at the airport, which to me is not of like a significant consequence. He wasn't saying anything like there was no racial undertone of what he was saying. He was just saying the meal is expensive. People then were kind
yeah.
of coming at him for like, oh, you're like a famous, presumably wealthy writer. You're gonna write this off on a New York Times account. Like you're probably on a business trip. Like, what do you like? Don't try to
Mm,
act like you're one of us. You're not one of us. Like that kind of deal. And he got on PBS on Friday. I didn't expect him to address it at all, right? Because I thought it was one of those things where he could just kind of let it like die down. But
yeah.
he and his colleagues like talked about it. And this man who, he has been writing for the New York Times for like most of my adulthood, if not my entire adulthood. He's been
Mm,
a well-known writer for quite some time. Very conservative figure, but I've thought of him as fair when he talks about things. And he apologized. He was like, "It was a stupid thing for me to say, a stupid thing for me to
mm,
post. I was trying to make a point. The point didn't land, and I'm sorry." Like it just, I just
right.
really appreciate it. He didn't like try to double down. And I feel like
Yeah.
there's such a
Yeah.
lesson in our time for not trying to like go down with the ship needlessly, right? Like there's certain things
Right.
we can be honest with ourselves and be like, you know what, like I was
Yeah.
wrong right there. Like I messed up. I think
Hmm.
we need that kind of self awareness and that kind of honesty. So
Right.
yeah.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that. I have I'm looking this way because my bookshelf is right here,
All
but
good.
there's a book that I have that talks about not all conflict is human. And
Come on.
so, words definitely mean things.
Right.
And so there's such an overlap, I think, where on one end, people need to feel safe to be wrong, right? But then two, um, people need to be accountable for their wrongdoing,
Certainly.
right? And so, kind of like having this general foundational rule that no one should be cast out from our communities.
Right.
If we can help it, if it's appropriate, like everyone belongs, everyone should stay.
With you.
With a couple of, if you are intent on doing harm, right, based on the terms that we have established as a group.
Right.
Harm means this, and this.
Right.
If you are intent on not doing that, and then you don't take ownership for whenever that harm happens, what does it look like for you to be in a rehabilitative space with outside of the reach of people that you can continue to do harm with? Like, I think one application of that is like whenever a clergy person falls, it seemed to like have been maybe have some predatory ways,
right,
or has done something. So it's like, should we give them access to the pulpit anymore, or what does it look like? Should we like say, well, you got to give up your church membership too? So it's like,
right,
a lot of these conversations, you know what I'm saying? We gotta have them safely. So that way we have a blueprint of what needs to happen.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about like we need to get rid of human beings, and what ways are we perpetuating?
Come
right? On. Our sense of justice is warped, in that way. And so it really messes with me, because I have had in my heart where I'm like, no, they need to go.
Sure. Yeah.
They need to go. And no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? But then at some point, who's left?
Who is left?
Because the goalpost of like what is harm and what is predator, like the rules kind of change depending on So we gotta be certain of the type of society we are trying to build, and making sure we're staying to our ethics when it comes to not casting anyone out.
Right.
As much as we can, like everyone can be rehabilitated, because that's our general belief as a race.
Yeah.
Right. That grace can be applicable for people, especially if you're a person of faith.
Right.
we have that perspective.
Yeah.
That forgiveness is possible for anyone.
Right.
And yet, at the same time, right, we don't have to have either or. We can have things that coexist at the same time.
Certainly.
Right.
Certainly. I think that's a more mature response than just throwing folks away or saying everything's okay, because everything certainly is not okay.
Right. Absolutely.
So here's something like, I want you to imagine, because it's like people are like, whoo, gotta pause this podcast. I'm gonna touch some grass.
Go get a drink of water.
Some tea. See some breeze on my face. So this question's light. Imagine, and this since we're doing the behind the scenes, right? This is a question I do ask every guest, because I love these answers so much, and they show so much about whoever I'm talking to. So imagine you're hosting a dinner. You can invite 4 guests. It can be dead, living, fictional, or real people. Brittney, who are you bringing to dinner?
So excited for this answer.
Yes.
I have kind of like a mixture, but probably one of my favorite writers and authors of any topic. Probably not so much poetry, but like any topic, hands down. My favorite person to read is James Baldwin. Hands down.
Okay.
Love James Baldwin.
Okay.
Just the way that he disseminates topics and has nuance and just
expansive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the way he breaks things down. He doesn't talk about it. I mean, if you look at his in person or like his video interviews, he sounds like an expert. Right?
Yeah, certainly.
You sound like your daddy was a preacher.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. He has his chops. Self-educated, but chops.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But just a matter of like he has like the creative kind of poet artist kind of way that he writes, because it's like it felt like he's still figuring things out.
Right.
So James Baldwin, I just want to have a conversation, with him. My maternal great grandmother is another person quick little like special story. I never got the pleasure of meeting her.
Got you.
My paternal, my father's
Sure.
grandmother, I actually got to meet her. She passed when she was like 103, 104.
Wow.
And she
Wow.
knew who I was when I met her. Met her
She
at
was still
her.
clear.
She was still clear, right?
Wow. Wow.
But on the other side, I never got an opportunity to meet her. My mother was unwed when she was pregnant with me,
Got
and
you.
when she found out she was pregnant with me, she was filled with shame, and um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so she was kind of like not telling people. But she went to go see my great grandmother, and as soon as she was like walking up the street, um, my great grandmother was sitting on her porch, and she said, "Child, come up here on this porch." She said, "I see you," and then she put her hand on my mom's belly.
Come on.
And my mom was probably like 8, 9 weeks at the
Early.
time, not
Early.
showing it off, super
Right.
early in it, right? And she said, "Ain't no point in," and I'm paraphrasing, but she was like, "Ain't no point in you being ashamed." She's like, "This little one is gonna be fine,"
Come on.
right? And so I still get emotional, just like
Even thinking about it.
one of my in an ancestral form, and she passed like a month or two before I was born.
Right.
And my family say like we passed each other on the way,
That's it. That's it. Right.
But yeah, so I would want her to be present at that dinner, um, just as a way because I want to honor her,
Yeah.
um, and tell her yes, yes, I'm all right, and here's how.
That's it.
Um, there's the third person. I would like to have an in-person conversation with her. She is an author of a book, and I was trying to figure out if I wanted to say this first. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be honest. I'll be myself,
Got to
right?
be yourself.
Uh, the name of the book is called "God Is a Black Woman" by Christina Cleveland.
Okay. Cool.
And right. And so it's one of those books that you kind of like there you can either have like a pause or you lean in,
Sure.
just depending on like, wherever your journey is. And so that book was much more than I thought it was going to be when I went into it.
Got you.
There's a lot of like personal, kind of stories. Her sister had schizophrenia. Like there was a lot of
Goodness.
medical racism and just a
Certainly.
lot of dehumanization that she
Yeah.
went
Yeah.
through. So I would love. She's still living,
Okay.
because I believe she's probably like maybe in her 40s.
Oh yeah. So,
She's
young. Yeah.
she's not old.
Yeah.
She's not old
Young.
at all. But I would want for her to be at that table because I would love to sit and hear about her life so
Yeah.
far, her stories. Um, and my fourth person, I wanted to have a young person that was there, somebody much younger than me, Marcy Martin.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
from right, we know her to be
Yeah.
this very young Black powerhouse.
About to say mogul in the
Um,
making.
right. I want to talk to this young sister,
Yeah.
not even really because I have anything to give or extend to her. Oh,
Sure.
but just to know more about, what your mama taught you.
Yeah.
What's her process look like? What does her community look like? And I would just love to
Certainly.
feed her. You know what I'm saying? Me being an ancestor in the making, I would love to serve her and feed her,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just to I mean, give her access to James Baldwin, and my great grandmother.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um, so those would be the four people that I would invite.
That's a wonderful group. That's a wonderful group.
I feel like we would have a lot of laughs.
I feel like it'd be a lot of laughs, and if y'all were in the restaurant, like the staff would be waiting to go home because I feel like y'all be in there a long time,
We shut that joint down.
shutting the place down. They're like, man,
Yeah,
it is 1:30.
right.
My
Y'all
feet
gotta
hurt.
go.
Y'all gotta go, man. Y'all gotta go. But that's good. That's beautiful, man. It's a really beautiful group. My final question for you today is simply, where would you like to see the mental health conversation in 10 years? I feel like it's made leaps and bounds in our lifetime, particularly thinking about the acceptability of saying you get therapy regularly. Where would you like to see the conversation, in 10 years?
Years. So that would mean, what are they calling the youngest kids? Gen
This
Alpha?
is Gen Alpha, yeah. So when Gen Alpha are
Right,
teenagers, right?
right. So they'll be grown adults. It's my overarching goal to work my way out of a job,
I hear that.
and not because like, oh, people will suddenly, therapy will come like, um, you know, I I really want, when I mean by saying I want to work my way out of a job is meaning that therapy will become repurposed into something else,
Okay.
meaning it won't be necessary,
Yeah.
right? Because people will have access to the full gambit of what they need in order to have wellness.
Right.
And so what that means is I will get to evolve and purpose my role in people's life into something else.
Got you. Got you.
And so that's absolutely my hope, that people won't remain sick because of society.
Mm-hmm.
And so the conversations that we'll have about mental wellness will look much more collective.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe my work will be more group stuff
Mm-hmm.
and more family stuff instead of just like one person coming and sitting with me.
Got you.
Because on an individual level, they'll be fine,
Right.
right? But it's just we need to have like more conversations about our collective health. So
Yeah.
if we were to go into another direction, like in 10 years, what I'm hoping is that we would do more collective ancestral mental health. Mental wellness would look like more like that.
Got you.
And it wouldn't even, the DSM wouldn't even be like a manual that we use to guide ourselves
Mm-hmm.
to figure out like what people are harmed by,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we look at the diagnoses that were used historically
Right.
to classify people being sick or even mad. Like, what does it mean for a person to be crazy,
Right.
right?
Right.
That those terms will be entirely repurposed and some put to rest in history, that they're not even reflective of society really anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's my hope. That's my hope of what conversations will be like.
I hear that. Not just like it sounds like a society where things just like really normalized and like
Mm-hmm.
and help and access to help. There's no barriers to it. Is what I'm hearing.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
That's wonderful.
Exactly.
So,
Mm-hmm.
are there any places you want folks to like keep up with you online, or where can they go to sort of like if they're listening to this and like, man, like I'd love for her to like help me out. Like where should folks go?
That is a wonderful question. So there is, I've worked a lot on being Googleable.
It's important.
That means working,
It's important.
yeah.
You know,
Which I don't know if that may not necessarily be a good thing, but
that part
not that
too.
I'm out here like doing dirt or nothing like that.
Listen, they can
But
find you. Nobody can hide. We all think oh, I'm just gonna be, incognito. No, they're gonna find you.
if you look up Brittney George LPC, my webpage comes up.
Perfect.
And so BrittneyGeorgeLPC.com is one way. I'm on a few directories as well, and directories are usually just like hubs where people can search for therapists. Most noteworthy is Inclusive Therapists, which I highly recommend to people because of the different identities that they feel like inclusive means all people are deserving of care no matter what your identity is. Historically, people have used like Psychology Today
Yeah.
in order to find a therapist, and that's really on its way out. And so inclusive therapists, there's therapy for Black girls, there's therapy for Black men, right? So there are places where people can find support according to what identity that they have.
Got you.
And so I'm on like most of those.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
But you can also find me on Instagram. Post occasionally there, and so you can find me there as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. Brittney, it has been a joy and pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. Please make sure you subscribe. We're on Substack, baddestchaplain.substack.com, on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Threads.
Yes, Threads.
Threads,
Yes.
Spill. We out here.
You on Spill?
I'm on Spill. I said, let me drop my little tea. I like tea. I'm not a coffee drinker. I drink tea.
I
But
was begging for a code for like the longest.
oh man, listen, if you still need one, I got you. I
No, I'm on
oh,
that
you on
now.
that? Okay, I'm gonna say like I'm like in there like hello. But we there, we there. Absolute. But y'all be blessed and thank you so much for listening and yeah, just enjoy the journey, y'all. Be safe. Peace.